All right, this is going to be a dive into Lightroom by Adobe. Now, this isn't Lightroom Classic, so if you're looking for that, this isn't the spot for that. I love Lightroom. I've taught it for many years now, and I use it all the time. The best part about Lightroom, if you're looking for a program that can be used on mobile devices, on just a browser, or on something like an iPad, and especially a computer, it's amazing. This one specifically is talking about how you can use it for a PC. So if you're on a Mac, this will apply, but you might just have to think about Command instead of Alt or Control or however that might work. So for those of you on a PC looking at Lightroom, this is an overview of that. I'm going to start from the very beginning and walk through that. Now, what you'll see on my Lightroom is a little bit different because it is fully integrated at this point. This is Lightroom 2024, in case you're using a different version, but the same principles are in effect for everything. Just as a tour of Lightroom, just so you can kind of understand it, in the middle of Lightroom is your display. Now that can change to a variety of different looks by clicking these buttons down below. So here's a scroll through of a whole bunch of different pictures. What's nice about this is if you have landscaped or horizontal or vertical, they'll resize into this lovely stack here. To resize them, you can click over here and drag, and they will resize so you can see a whole bunch of them. That just makes scrolling through them really easy. Or you can go to any of these other views. So here's Square Grid. This will give you a little bit more information. It'll allow you to rate it. It'll also tell you what kind of picture it might be. So it gives a little bit more information, which can be helpful. We also have this side-by-side comparison view, so you can look at two. This can help if you're trying to compare two different looks or two different things that you like. Here is something they're always going to show initially, is you can flag and write, edit with reference, etc. I'm going to click off of that. Thank you. I'm going to try it on my own in this tutorial. So that's the comparison view. And then you have kind of your full version view, which is really nice. Now, down below, you have a slider. You can scroll through all of your photos. You can also use the keyboard keys left and right to click through and look at different photos, which is really helpful. That is basically how you can browse through your pictures. Now, in this version, you can also go up to the top and you can do a whole bunch of things up here. So let's go ahead and talk about that stuff. Now, in the very top, we have File, and this allows us to do some kind of like important changes that we might want to do. For instance, if you're using Lightroom Classic, you can migrate your photos from there. You can export or you can edit in Photoshop. There's actually some really quick, easy ways to get to all those buttons while you're editing as well. You can also add photos up here. Edit, you can undo things, you can duplicate. Again, all of these settings are really accessible by right-clicking on a photo, but they are here. Photo, you can again set your stars, you can pick things, you can flip it, you can do auto settings, but again, as I've said, you can get to those just by clicking on the photo. Next, we have View. Now, this is actually really helpful in a lot of respects, and I'm going to show you one that I use frequently, and that is F, full screen. Now, I'm recording this on my screen, and my screen's actually much bigger than this HD window, so this is going to look out of proportion. But if I push F, you'll notice everything kind of went away, and obviously it looks like it zoomed. On my computer, I can see the whole thing. But what it does is it just shows you the image. It gets rid of all of this other stuff, and that's really helpful for looking at your photo and saying, do I like this photo? Is this an effective photo to me? All right, going down from there on the left side, we can hide all of the kind of editing, selection, and file photo areas. And we can also go back or forward. From there, we have Cloud, which is the one I always use. I'm always editing on the cloud. I also have a whole bunch of storage because I run a media program, and we just have a lot of storage for the photos that I use and then that my students use or others use that we need to use. So I'm going to say use again. Or you can also have local photos, and that's stuff that you can see on your computer or like right from a camera, an SD card. Again, I don't use that as often because this cloud is so easy to use and it syncs amazingly well, which I've always liked. From there, I can add photos, which is the way to get photos in here. And then I can go into all of this kind of good stuff with learning. And Adobe's Learn programs, if you don't like this one, are actually great. So their Learn programs are super intuitive. They work really well. I highly recommend those. Then in the community, you can create a profile, do featured stuff, following things. I don't do a lot with this community thing, so I usually just have that closed. From there, we have all of your photos. Now, this is like every photo you've ever put into Lightroom, it's going to be there. So for me right now, it's 11,243. I have 2,423 deleted photos. The cool thing about Lightroom is when you delete something, it will delete them, but it always puts it on a timer. So it says items are permanently deleted after 60 days. That's great because if you accidentally delete something or you need to go back and you're like, oh shoot, I shouldn't have deleted that, you have 60 days to kind of correct that. Otherwise, all your photos are here. These are kind of self-explanatory, recent ads, edits, things like that. This people one's pretty helpful if you're working in a community that you frequently use different photos of people. You can click on people and it will identify heads of people. I have certain people I've logged because I would use their photo a lot. But as you can see here, it will identify a whole bunch of faces and it will tell you how many photos it found based on those faces that it thinks are the same people. So that can be very helpful. Again, if you double click that, so if I go to this individual, if I double click that, it's going to show me all the photos that are there. It's also going to ask if this is the same person, and I'm going to say yes, and then it's going to merge those in here. And then I can add the name up here. So this people one is super helpful if you're working with a larger group of many different people. Connections, again, just kind of a social function of that. I can close that up. These little drop-down arrows are super helpful for just cleaning up what you're seeing over here. All right, now here's the heart of it, and here's really what you're working on, which is albums, and then this plus button and this little drop-down button. Now you can see here, I have shot a lot of different kind of areas around our school that I work at, and then I have a whole bunch of other albums. You have two different things you can choose from. This is a folder that has the little caret. It makes sense. It's a folder, right? And then inside folders are albums. You can also have subfolders within folders. So for instance, each year, if we're doing more media shoots, I usually keep the ones from the year prior, but I have media shoots from last year, and then I have media shoots from this year. So those are both different folders with albums inside each folder. When I click on one of those albums, I get all my pictures and I get all the information of the pictures, which is really helpful. I tend to go from this view. I just like it because I'm able to compare really quickly with a look of an eye. But it's a great way to set up things, and it's a great way to have access to all of your photos. If, however, I just want to see a whole bunch of media shoot pictures, I can click media shoots, and then I have access to all the photos I've ever taken in different media shoots. And I can scroll back through those, and maybe I just want to find a few select pictures. That might help to kind of help me scroll through. So as I teach my students, folder organization is really important. To create a folder, you just go up to the plus, you say create folder. It's going to ask what kind of folder. You can say, it'll ask you like, do you want it inside media shoots? For now, I'm going to say no. And I'm just going to say folder name is example folder. Once I do that, it alphabetizes it here. So now I have example. There's nothing in here. So I need to create an album. I could do that with this blue button, or I could click here and say create album, and then I could call it example. And then that's inside example, and now I see example. The really neat thing is now I can go to all my photos and I could choose any picture. Let's say this is an important example picture. I could click that, drag it over, drop it in there. And it does two things. One, it moves it here, but also it doesn't actually move it from this location, which is really helpful because oftentimes, especially with media shoots, I'll do things like social media posts, and I want them still in the original folder, but I want to move it to the social media folder because in the social media folder, I'm going to usually make things square, you know, the 1x1 orientation, and that way they go easily and fully on to social media, but I don't want to lose them from these folders. So having those folders within the folders are really helpful. If you mess up and don't want your folder, just click on it, right click and say delete album. And now I get rid of that album. And then let's say I don't want this folder because it's just an example. I can say delete folder, and there we go. That's easy to delete things, to add things, to move through. So that's all of this over here. The cool thing again is that this syncs with all of your online stuff. You can see it up here. It's actually syncing some things. And if you're like, what's going on with this syncing? You could click it and you can actually see what's syncing, and you can pause it here. So sometimes it'll be syncing and I'm like, is this sync done? And it will usually say to me like, syncing one more photo or something like that. And you can click and actually see which ones are syncing up here, which is nice. All right. That's kind of the overview of how organization works, different options you have here. All of this information over here is actually what we're going to use to edit. So I'm going to do a second video right after this one now that just talks through your kind of like basic editing, just starting from scratch if you're going to edit, how to import a photo, and then how to start editing. Thanks for watching. Video number 2 will be next.